This happened just a few weeks ago. I was 32 and took a night shift nursing job at the old hospital because I needed steady hours. The job market was rough, and I thought it would be a good place to pull myself together after my breakup. Walking through the halls for the first time, the flickering fluorescent lights made everything feel empty. It smelled like antiseptic, and the silence felt heavy over the beds. I thought I'd be alright then. My first shift was fine until around 2 in the morning. I heard something. It was faint at first, just footsteps coming from a nearby empty wing. I thought it might be a patient wandering around. I tried to brush it off and stay focused on my paperwork. But the footsteps came back, soft but more persistent. A tickle of unease crept in, but I shook my head. Hospitals have a lot of strange noises, right? Then, the next night, I was checking on a patient when I glanced down a hallway. I saw a light flickering over the nurse's station. A shiver ran down my spine. It couldn't be a power issue. Just an old bulb. But I had to check. When I got there, the light stopped flickering. I stared at it, my heart racing. I took a deep breath and turned to walk back, but I caught myself wondering if I had imagined that. Maybe I was just tired. On the third night, I was sitting at the desk when I heard whispers. They floated through the air, soft and muffled. It felt like they were coming from the restricted area. My feet barely made a sound on the cold tiles as I crept closer. My skin crawled, but curiosity got the better of me. I reached for the door handle, it felt ice cold. I opened the door a crack but found nothing. Just empty beds and silence. Then, while organizing the charts, I stumbled across something strange. One of the patient files was dated well before the hospital even closed down a decade ago. I stared at it, disbelief washing over me. Maybe it was just a mistake. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It felt like the hospital was alive with voices of the past. Was I going crazy, or was something else going on? That night, I heard the footsteps again, this time right behind me. I turned around, but nobody was there. My breath caught in my throat, and a chill ran down my spine. It felt like I was being watched. I didn't know what to do. Why did I continue working there? I thought I could handle it. But the whispers and footsteps wouldn't leave me. Each night, I felt more trapped, like I was part of something terrifying but could never see what it was. I kept thinking about that old patient file. Who was it? Did their story live in those walls? I never stopped thinking about it. I still hear those footsteps in my dreams. I wonder what really haunts those halls. Some things, maybe, should stay buried. The fourth night arrived, and I dreaded it. I was tired, more exhausted than usual, but I had a job to do. As I sat at the desk, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, an irritating reminder of the endless shift ahead. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was never alone in this place. My skin prickled with anticipation. Around midnight, I decided to do my rounds. It was an attempt to distract myself. I walked past the empty beds, their pale covers casting shadows in the dim light. As I reached the far wing, I heard it again, soft laughter. It was distant but unmistakable. I froze. My instinct screamed at me to leave, but I turned toward the sound. Hello. I called out, unsure if my voice would carry. There was no response. Just silence. I took a hesitant step toward the sounds but found nothing. It felt eerie, like I was wandering in a dream, where everything was just out of reach. The laughter echoed again, this time closer. My heart pounded as I glanced down the dark corridor that I stepped back and bumped into a cart filled with supplies, the clatter loud in the stillness. I cursed under my breath, but I needed to get out of that wing. I hurried away, my mind racing with confusion. What was happening to me? Returning to the nurse's station, I grabbed the odd patient file again. It was a comfort, a distraction. I flipped through the pages, searching for anything that might explain why this hospital felt like a crypt. That S when I noticed something, a name I'd seen before. Clara Jennings. It struck me. I had remembered the name from an old news clipping I found online. Clara was one of the last patients to check in before the hospital shut down. She had died under mysterious circumstances. There was little information, but I remembered the headlines. Tragedy strikes as patient mysteriously vanishes. That article had given me chills. The laughter returned, but this time it sounded frantic, filled with desperation. I stood up, heart racing, and instinctively looked around. I felt sweat trickle down my back. Was Clara's spirit still here? Did she want something from me? I tried to brush it off, but the whispers resumed, surrounding me like a thick fog. Help me, help me. The urgency in the voice clawed at me. I could barely breathe. I gripped the file tightly, praying it would somehow offer answers. Just as I was about to flee back to the hallway, the lights flickered violently, plunging everything into darkness. Panic set in, and I fumbled with the flashlight on my phone. It illuminated nothing but shadows across the walls. The oppressive stillness broke, and I could hear my own breath. Then I felt a cold breeze swirling around me, carrying a familiar scent of disinfectant mixed with something sweet, like perfume. I took a shaky step back and bumped into the cart again. I was trapped. Suddenly, whispers filled the room, more distinct now. Clara. Clara Jennings. Over and over, they echoed, clawing at the edges of my sanity. I needed to know what happened to her. I needed to know why she was still here. I stumbled backward toward the exit, sending the cart crashing to the ground. I knew then that I couldn't ignore this any longer. Then everything went dark again. When I opened my eyes again, the darkness felt thick, suffocating even. My heart raced. Had I lost consciousness? I fumbled with my phone, flipping on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, but it only heightened the shadows lurking around me. The cart lay in disarray. Supplies were strewn everywhere, creating a stark contrast in the otherwise still room. The laughter had stopped, but the whispers remained, a persistent echo that pressed against my ears. Clara, help me. I turned toward the door. The hallway had transformed. The dim light from the exit flickered, casting long, distorted shadows. Was it my imagination, or did the corridor seem longer? Panic gripped me, but I pushed forward, my instincts urging me to escape. As I stepped into the hall, something caught my eye. A door ajar at the end of the corridor emitted an eerie glow. I approached carefully, curiosity getting the better of me. Was Clara somehow leading me to her? Just before I reached it, I heard footsteps, deliberate, slow, echoing. My breath caught in my throat. I froze again, listening intently. The footsteps were not faint. They were headed my way. That I barely had time to think before I turned back, heart hammering. I sprinted to the nearest room. It was a patient room, dark and cluttered with dusty equipment. The thought of hiding made my heart race even faster. That I shoved the door closed and held my breath, listening for anything, any sign that I was alone. The footsteps stopped. Silence enveloped me, thick enough to touch. Then, out of the quiet, I heard it again, a faint laugh, this time accompanied by a soft tapping. A knock. I pressed my ear against the door. It was rhythmic, persistent. Clara? I whispered, though part of me didn't want a response. The idea of her spirit reaching out made my stomach churn. The tapping stopped abruptly. I dared to glance through the small window in the door. My heart sank. A figure stood at the end of the hallway, shrouded in shadow. I could barely make out details, but the silhouette felt wrong, too tall, too angular. It didn't move, just stood there, as if watching. That I instinctively stepped back, my mind racing with thoughts. Was this Clara? I couldn't tell if I was delusional or if something supernatural was happening. Desperation clawed at me. I had to confront it. I had to know the truth. With a deep breath, I reached for the doorknob. This was madness, but in this place, fear had become a dull roar. I had to silence it or succumb to the whispers. As I swung the door open, a wave of cool air rushed over me, almost urging me forward, but then, the figure shifted. The air turned electric, and I flinched as the hallway lights exploded in bursts of brilliant white. A voice rang out, clear and chilling. "You shouldn't have come here." Everything fell silent, the echoes of the night stilled as I stared into the darkness ahead, heart racing. What was it? I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting, and I realized then that I was not just facing Clara's spirit. There was something much darker at play, and it seemed determined to keep its secrets buried. As I peered into the hallway, the voice echoed in my mind. It was deep and laden with a menace I couldn't shake. I forced myself to step out of the room, trying to catch a glimpse of the figure. It had vanished, leaving only the flickering lights as evidence of its presence. I needed answers. The whispers hadn't ceased, they lingered in the corners of my mind, a quiet torment. I moved down the corridor, feeling each step was weighed down, almost like I was wading through water. The glow from that mysterious door at the end beckoned me again. "Clara?" My voice was barely above a whisper. It felt foolish to call out, but I was desperate. Just then, the lights dimmed again, and the temperature dropped. A chill wrapped around me, stiffening my spine, then, I saw it, a shadow sweeping across the wall. I froze, eyes glued to the figure as it glided down the length of the corridor. It didn't walk, it flowed, like smoke. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but my feet felt rooted to the ground that I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts. "This isn't real," I told myself. "Just get to the exit." But when I opened them, the shadow stood right in front of me, its features still hidden. My heart raced with terror. Before I could react, the glow of the door pulsed brighter, almost hypnotic. Something compelled me towards it. I took a tentative step, and the figure shifted again, blocking my path. "You cannot leave," it murmured, the voice a haunting melody that dripped with chilling certainty. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, surprise giving strength to my voice. The figure did not answer. Instead, it raised a hand toward me, and I caught a glimpse of a long, bony finger, then, with a sudden whoosh, the lights went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone. When the flashlight flickered back to life, the figure had dissipated, but the air crackled with an unseen tension. "Clara?" I called again, fear edging my voice higher than I'd intended. The whispers returned, more urgent. "Clara, are you here?" As I moved closer to the door, I noticed an unusual mark on the floor just beneath the glow. It was a message, scratched into the wood, "They won't let you leave." My stomach twisted as I processed the words. Memories of Clara's laughter mingled with the chilling atmosphere, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread that I took a step back, scanning the corridor for any sign of life. Something shifted behind me, and I spun around, my light illuminating a small, door-sized square on the wall I hadn't noticed before. It looked like a maintenance hatch, slightly ajar. Without thinking, I moved toward it, curiosity battling with my fear. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps again, closer this time. My pulse quickened, and I realized I had only moments to decide. Should I go back and face whatever lurked behind me, or squeeze through the hatch and plunge into whatever darkness lay beyond? Before I could decide, the door creaked open wider, revealing a dark void that I felt a cold grip on my shoulder, and that familiar, eerie laughter echoed around me once more. The weight of dread settled back in. I had to make a choice and fast. I took a deep breath and veered toward the maintenance hatch, my instincts whispering that it might be my only option. The space was cramped, I barely fit through, squeezing my body into the dark. The chill enveloped me, and the laughter faded into the background as I settled into the unknown. As I crawled through, the air grew stagnant, heavy with dust and something else I couldn't quite identify. I had no idea how far I was from the corridor. The dim beam from my phone flickered, revealing the rough walls lined with peeling paint. My heart sank further. I felt like I was moving away from hope, deeper into a nightmare. Suddenly, I heard its soft whimpering, more desperate than the whispers outside. Clara? I hesitated, the sound both familiar and foreign. It pulled at my heart as if two threads of certainty and dread tangled together. I shuffled forward, the noise growing louder, each whimper twisting in my chest like a knife. Clara? I called, forcing my voice to stay steady. My breath hitched with expectation and fear. Help me, a voice replied, but it was muffled, as if spoken through thick walls. It didn't sound like her, yet something in it tugged at my brain, a new layer of anxiety. The passage suddenly opened up into a larger room. I hesitated again, the beam of light gliding over the bare walls. On the floor, bound with old, frayed ropes, lay a figure shrouded in darkness. My heart dropped as I realized it wasn't Clara, but a woman with long, tangled hair obscuring her face. "Get me out of here!" she gasped, panic in her voice. "Who are you?" I asked, edging closer despite the warning bells in my mind. "Just help me. Please." The desperation in her tone sent chills down my spine. I could sense the impending danger, but something urged me to act that I reached out, fingers brushing against the ropes. They were rough, worn, and frayed, and I fumbled with the knots. My own heart raced, each beat echoing the silence around us. Then I heard the sound of footsteps again, creeping closer from the corridor behind me. "Faster!" she urged, her eyes pleading. I twisted my fingers, the knots refusing to give way. Every second felt like an eternity with the footsteps growing nearer. "Who did this to you?" I asked, breathless as the tension built again. "Please," just as I was about to free her, the lights flickered in the passage beyond. My heart dropped. The unsettling whisper of the shadow re-emerged in my mind, warning me like an old friend, "You cannot leave." I felt panic build as the footsteps halted. I turned, my phone's light bathing the passage. There it was again, the shadow, but this time, it moved toward us with purpose. Fear surged through me. I had to make a choice, finish freeing her or face whatever lurked in the dark. The air was thick with two kinds of urgency, and my instincts screamed. Just then, the woman let out a terrified scream, and I knew the shadow had heard. With a final tug, I loosened the ropes enough for her to start moving, but the darkness was closing in. "Run!" I shouted, shoving her toward an opening in the wall that I could barely see. And then everything shattered. The lights went out completely, plunging us into suffocating blackness. The darkness swallowed us whole. I could barely see my own hands, let alone anything else. The woman's ragged breathing filled the silence, muffled and frantic. I felt a rush of adrenaline push me forward. "Stay close," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. Suddenly, I remembered my phone. I fumbled for it, relieved when the faint light blinked back to life. It flickered, casting shadows that danced grotesquely on the walls. Glancing back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. "Where do we go?" she panted, fear dripping every word. "There has to be an exit." "Just follow me," I replied, my heart racing. The last remnants of darkness seemed to pulse against the light. I led her through the opening, not knowing where it might lead. The passage was narrow, but it opened into another small room, filled with debris. Broken furniture and rusted equipment cluttered the floor. My pulse quickened, the last thing I wanted was to trip and fall here. "Do you know where we are?" she asked, trembling. "No," I admitted. "I was looking for Clara. I don't know where she is." The woman let out a soft sob. "Clara? I heard a Clara in my dreams. The dark it talked about her." A chill slid down my spine. "What do you mean? What did it say?" "I don't remember," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "It just told me to wait here." We fell silent as I scanned the room. I felt as though we were trapped in a spider's web, the walls closing in around us. My breath quickened at the sense of urgency, of being hunted. I had to find a way out. The shadows shifted as I pointed my phone toward a door at the far end of the room. I crept over, the floor creaking with every step. I reached for the doorknob and paused. It felt cold, wrong somehow. I looked back. "Are you ready?" She nodded, but her eyes told a different story. They were wide with fear, reflecting the light like mirrors. I twisted the handle, and the door swung open unexpectedly, creaking loudly in protest. A musty, stale breeze rushed past us. I peered inside a dark corridor extended beyond, just as ominous as the one we'd just escaped. "After you," I whispered, trying to keep the panic from my voice. As she stepped through, I heard a cacophony of noises behind me, the sound of something sliding across the floor and then a soft, haunting laugh that made my skin prickle. I turned quickly. The flickering light revealed forms moving in the shadows. My stomach dropped as the laughter grew louder, enveloping me in a cold embrace. "Run!" I yelled, shoving her ahead of me again, not wanting to linger in this cursed space. We dashed into the corridor, my heart racing, but just when I thought we might escape, the ground trembled beneath us. A rumble echoed, like thunder in the bowels of the hospital. That's when I saw a figure emerging from the darkness, taller than a man, shadowy and shifting. The laughter echoed once more, now a perfect symphony of dread. In that moment, I knew we weren't alone. I had to keep moving. My legs felt heavy, but fear pushed me forward. The dark figure loomed behind us, an unsettling silhouette against the dim light. Adrenaline surged. "Go faster." I urged her. The corridor felt endless. We stumbled over debris, discarded medical equipment and piles of dust. Each step echoed, making it seem like we were being hunted. I risked a glance back. The figure was still there, its laughter reverberating like a twisted melody. "Where do we go?" she gasped, panic creeping into her voice. "Just keep going," I shouted. The corridor twisted, branches offshooting like veins in a dying tree. I had no idea which way led to safety. Then, I spotted an old emergency exit sign flickering above us, half buried in the grime. My breath hitched. "There. That way." I sprinted towards it, her footsteps close behind. As I reached for the handle, I heard a shriek that pierced through the heavy air. It was a sound of pure despair that coursed through me. I froze for a moment, my heart biting with fear. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice low. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling. It seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying my dread. Hesitation clawed at me, but I had to push through. I threw the door open and stumbled into a stairwell. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sickly glow. As we descended, I could feel the weight of the shadows pulling at my back. I counted steps as we rushed down, hoping that with each one, we were getting closer to freedom. But the air grew colder. It bit at my skin like icy fingers. I hesitated again, my instincts screaming. "I don't like this," she murmured, pointing downwards. "It feels wrong." I nodded, but I couldn't stop now. The fear of the figure behind me pushed me to continue. Suddenly, I felt a cold breath on my neck, and the laughter grew louder, echoing off the walls. I turned and saw nothing there, just empty shadows. "Keep going," I shouted, urgency taking over. We reached the door at the bottom of the stairs and I threw it open, revealing a dark basement filled with old hospital equipment and stacked boxes. "Where are we?" she asked, glancing around with wide eyes. "I don't know," I admitted. "But we can't stay here." Then I heard something far away, a soft, rhythmic tapping. It echoed through the basement, almost like footsteps. I glanced at her, seeing the fear mirrored in her features. "Please, let us just go," she pleaded, a quiver in her voice. I had to decide. I stepped deeper into the room, flashlight beam bouncing off the walls, revealing a doorway at the far end. "We can check that way," I said, motioning for her to follow. As we moved, the tapping grew louder. The air thickened with tension. Then everything went still, and I felt a presence behind us. It was close. I turned, but the basement was empty. It felt like the walls were closing in. What is happening? I breathed, panic rushing back. Just as I turned to her, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow curled around a corner, swift and unnoticed. We need to go, now. As I grabbed her arm, I realized I was no longer sure whether the real darkness was in the hall or in what lurked inside us. I pushed her toward the far door, my mind racing. The tapping had stopped, but now something else filled the silence, a low, guttural sound that crawled up my spine. I could feel it in my bones, an unsettling vibration that told me we needed to move. As we reached the door, I hesitated. It was old and rusty, the paint peeling like dead skin. What if it's locked? She whispered, fear creeping into her voice again. Then we'll find another way, I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I twisted the handle, and it creaked open, revealing a narrow passageway cloaked in darkness. I flicked on the flashlight, its beam slicing through the blackness. With a whispered prayer, we stepped inside. The passage was cramped, the walls stained with what looked like years of neglect. I could hear the sound of our breathing, ragged and shallow. The air was thick, almost suffocating. I took a step forward, then another. With each footfall, the sound returned, soft tapping, but this time it felt closer, like it was right behind us. My skin prickled. What is that? She asked, looking back nervously. I don't know, I replied, trying to steady my shaking hands. But we have to keep going. In the flickering light, I noticed something, scratches on the walls. Long, deep gouges, almost like claw marks. Did you see that? I pointed, my throat tightening. Her eyes widened. What could do that? I didn't want to answer, but the thought was there, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I picked up my pace. The tapping intensified, echoing like a countdown. Suddenly, a sound burst from behind us. It was heavy, like something hitting the ground. I whirled around, my heart racing, but again there was nothing. Just darker shadows creeping along the walls. Let us go, I urged, pulling her forward. We moved hurriedly down the passage, and I felt the temperature drop further. It was an unnatural chill, the kind that seeped into your very core. My breath came out in visible puffs. What if she started, her voice trembling? What if it's trapped down here with us? Don't say that. I snapped, the fear bubbling over. It was too late for thoughts like those. We emerged into another cramped room. Old medical supplies lay scattered about, creating obstacles that slowed our escape. Something caught my eye, a large, dusty mirror hanging on the wall at the far end. As I moved closer, the flashlight flickered, throwing erratic shadows. A sense of dread washed over me. What are you doing? She asked, pulling at my arm. Wait, I whispered, drawn to my reflection. But instead of my own face, I saw someone behind me. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. My heart thundered as I faced the mirror again. There it was, a figure, shrouded in darkness, staring back at me with hollow eyes. Before I could react, the room plunged into total darkness. My heart raced. I reached for her, but she was gone. Where are you? I cried out, panic enveloping me. Then I heard the sound of slow, deliberate tapping approaching from the shadowy corners. I was not alone anymore. I stumbled forward, trying to orient myself in the oppressive darkness. My flashlight flickered ominously, casting long, wavering shadows that danced at the edges of my vision. Please, I whispered, hoping she'd respond. My voice cracked, sounding weak even to my own ears. Another tap echoed through the room. It was closer this time, heavy and deliberate, like a countdown to something terrible. I backed away from the spot where the mirror had been, whatever I had seen burned into my mind. The chill settled deeper within me, an icy grip on my spine. Leah. I called again, desperation creeping through my chest. Nothing. Just that chilling sound again, creeping ever closer. I held the flashlight up, and for a brief second, I swore I saw her silhouette darting between the scattered medical supplies. Leah. But it disappeared as quickly as it appeared, swallowed by the shadows. Panic washed over me. I turned, running in the opposite direction. The walls felt like they were closing in. I didn't stop to think, just moved, my breath hitching in my throat. I slipped into another passage, smaller this time, dirtier. The flashlight revealed old tiles, cracked and stained with who knows what. I pressed forward, hoping to get away from the tapping, praying to find her. The room opened up again, revealing an old nurse's station. A dusty desk sat forlorn, tools of the trade rusted in place. I spotted a faint glow coming from underneath one of the cabinets. Curious, I moved toward it, hope flickering for just a moment. But as I knelt down, the glow died out, replaced by an oppressive silence. I cursed under my breath and turned around, ready to run again, when I felt something behind me, a cool breath against my neck. My heart seized. I whirled to face whatever awaited me, but there was nothing there. Just darkness, thick and heavy. I took a step back, breathless, and then the tapping returned, louder, echoing off the walls, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. I dashed toward the door on the far side of the room, my feet scrambling over the debris. I pushed it open, driven by the primal urge to escape. As I crossed the threshold, I heard a voice, soft, almost sweet, yet laced with despair. Help me! It cut through the air like a knife, drawing me in. My instincts screamed to run, but I hesitated. The voice was familiar, weaving around my thoughts. I stepped back, torn between fear and the hope that it was Leah. Just as I took a step toward the sound, something cold and sharp grabbed my ankle. I stumbled, falling to the ground with a thud. My flashlight flickered wildly before going out completely. Let go! I shouted, panic rising. Flailing, I reached down, but all I felt were fingers cold, clammy, dragging down into the inky blackness. Then everything went silent. The tapping stopped, the voice faded, and I was left with only my ragged breathing echoing in my ears. I crawled backward, feeling for the door, desperately seeking an exit. What had I touched? What was this thing reaching for me? And then I realized. The silence should have terrified me more than the tapping ever had. The darkness swirled around, thickening like fog. I felt trapped, and suddenly, I wasn't sure I was alone anymore. I needed to find a light. I needed to escape. But escape from what? I could feel it lurking, watching me from the corners of my mind. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A key? I grabbed it instinctively. I didn't know what it opened, but I had to find out fast. And then I heard it again. Help me! I sprang to my feet, shaking off the terror long enough to sprint toward the door, the key clutched in my fist. There was no turning back now. I burst through the door, an urgent need propelling me forward. I could almost taste freedom. Relief coursed through me as I stumbled into a familiar corridor, the path I had stumbled through before. The fluorescent lights flickered back to life, illuminating the space with a sickly glow. I was surrounded by shadows, but in this moment, they felt less threatening. I sprinted deeper into the corridor, praying I had the right direction this time. Leah! I shouted, desperation coating my voice. I had to find her. The weight of the darkness pursued me, but I could hear my own heartbeat, its rhythm comforting in contrast to the echoes of laughter that were now haunting the periphery of my mind. I sprinted toward the emergency exit, my breath ragged, the key still gripped tightly in my hand. That I reached the door again, the cold handle sending a shiver through me. Please, please work, I muttered under my breath. I inserted the key, hand trembling, and turned it. With a satisfying click, the lock released. I pushed the door open with force, spilling out into the night air that I stumbled outside, blinking at the moonlight that washed over me, its clarity a stark contrast to the labyrinth of darkness I had just emerged from. I gasped, pulling in the cool night air, but the weight in my chest remained. I turned back, hesitating at the threshold of the door. I was free but terrified. Leah. My voice echoed back to me. There was no answer, only the oppressive silence of the night. I felt drawn back, as if the shadows inside were calling me once more. It was utterly maddening. Had the darkness taken her, the building loomed behind me, its presence ominous under the moonlight. I took a cautious step back toward the door, but my instinct screamed against it. I had survived, but fragments of that haunting laughter danced in my thoughts. What had I seen down there? What if I had made the wrong choice? Clara and the shadow, what was that? My mind raced, trying to comprehend the enormity of everything I had encountered, the whispers, the relentless laughter. My heart pounded in my chest as the conflict raged within me. Was Clara's spirit bound to that hospital? Was the shadow some other trapped entity, or was it all just the machinations of my overworked mind? I walked away, peeling myself from the allure of the darkness. I had to go home. The hospital receded behind me, a hulking mass, its windows like black eyes reflecting the memory of the night. But the curiosity gnawed at me, sharper than ever. I couldn't shake the question, had I left it behind, or had it merely shifted, thumping brutally against the edges of my reality? As I drove away, I glanced back one last time, a chill settling in my stomach. The laughter echoed faintly as I turned the corner, melding into the sound of the night. Would I ever escape its hold? The thoughts twisted in my mind, refusing to settle. Maybe I was meant to remember even if I wanted to forget that I moved to a different city after that, trying to put distance between myself and that haunted place. But sometimes, I still hear the whispers in my dreams and wonder about Leah and Clara. Were they still there? Did their stories linger in the shadows of that cursed hospital? I never went back to find out. Some doors, it seems, are better left closed.